But this only made my relationship with the girls worse.
How stupid do you have to be to get pregnant like this? Don't you think that you're a bit old to have children?
Old? I'm only 32. And both your father and I have wanted this for some time.
Yeah, well, neither of us want this, so maybe you should consider getting an abortion. Our father doesn't need more children draining his bank account.
Hi, my name is Carol, and growing up, I had always wanted to have a big family with lots of children. I just loved the idea of watching them grow and discover the world around them. However, my dream quickly became a nightmare when I became a stepmother for some of the worst-behaved teenage girls that I had ever met. It all started when I became serious about finding someone to settle down with and used online dating as a way to meet someone. I had gone on a few dates with some very unusual people, but then I met Michael. He was so incredibly handsome, and very clearly had his life together. The only drawbacks were that he was divorced and had 2 teenage daughters, but I honestly didn't see these as drawbacks at all. Apparently, he had gotten married to his ex-wife soon after high school, and they had twin daughters right away. But years later, they realized that they weren't a good fit for one another, and so they got a divorce but shared custody of the girls. I knew that coming into the relationship would be a challenge, but I was prepared to make it work, as I loved the idea of helping to raise 2 young women. Their names were Jasmine and Candace, and at first they just seemed very shy, but they quickly became very catty and treated me like an interloper.
I can't believe our father would marry such a trashy bitch like you.
Yeah, like why couldn't he just find someone who wasn't a gold digger? Why don't you just divorce him so that he can find someone better?
They would never say such things when Michael was present. Instead, they kept their bullying of me a secret. At the time, I didn't want to rock the boat, and so I didn't tell Michael anything, and I just assumed that the girls would eventually come around, but they never did. I would try to get them to join me for spa dates, or trips to the mall, or even go antiquing, but they just ignored me. It hurt, of course, to feel rejected by them, especially since I was trying so hard to win them over. I knew that I could never replace their mother, and I didn't want to, but I did want them to also grow to love me over time. After a couple years, though, things got both worse and better. I found out that I had become pregnant, and both Michael and I were overjoyed at the news, but this only made my relationship with the girls worse.
How stupid do you have to be to get pregnant like this? Don't you think that you're a bit old to have children?
Old? I'm only 32. And both your father and I have wanted this for some time.
Yeah, well, neither of us want this, so maybe you should consider getting an abortion. Our father doesn't need more children draining his bank account.
That made no sense, of course, as both Michael and I were working and making good money. We weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we were doing okay for ourselves. In the weeks that followed, though, the girls would constantly say vile things to me and would do their best to make me feel unwanted. Just as before, I didn't tell Michael anything about what was going on. That is until I overheard the girls speaking with their mother on the phone.
Sorry, Mom, but it isn't working. She's just ignoring us.
Well then, you need to try harder. Otherwise, we'll need to resort to something a bit more drastic.
But Mom, what does that even mean?
Just let me worry about that. For now, keep at it. If we want to get that bitch out of our house and get me back into it, then you two need to smarten up. Stop being nice to her and get her to leave.
It all made perfect sense now. The reason that the girls were being so mean was because they were being manipulated by their mother into seeing me as the enemy, although I would never have guessed that the reason for it was that she wanted my husband back. I still didn't know if I should say anything to him. After all, I had no proof, and I knew that neither the girls or Michael's ex-wife would admit to what they were up to. But then, suddenly the girls started acting differently. At first, I was shocked and didn't know how to process what was going on, and I was highly suspicious of it.
Oh, Carol, your feet must hurt. Someone who is pregnant like you shouldn't be doing the dishes. Here, let me do them for you.
Yeah, why don't you go and sit down for a bit, and I'll make you a tea.
Alarm bells were going off in my head, and I knew that I couldn't trust them, but I played along so that I could see exactly what game they were playing. Shortly after I sat down and stretched out, Jasmine came into the room holding a cup of tea, and she had a really frightened expression on her face. Is that for me?
Yes, but well...
Is everything all right, Jasmine? Listen, I know things between us haven't always been great, but I want you to know that you can always come to me if you need to talk about something. Believe it or not, but I love you and your sister just as much as I love your father, and I haven't given up hope of us being a family. I could see Jasmine battling with her thoughts as she held the cup of tea, and then suddenly she placed it on a table far out of my reach.
But what if I almost did something terrible? Like really, really terrible.
Then we would find a way to work through it. As a family.
Well, then I can't give you this tea. My mother told me to put something in it that would make you miscarry, and I just can't give it to you. I don't care what she says. You aren't a bad person.
I see. For now, it would be best if you told her that I did drink it, but that it didn't work. There's no sense in making her think you betrayed her. We'll have to have a talk with your father about this and come up with a solution, though. She is your mother, and it's unfair that you should be stuck in such a terrible position. Just then, Candace rushed into the room with tears streaming down her cheeks. I could see the relief on her face, though, when she saw that I hadn't drank the tea.
Oh, thank God that you didn't drink it.
No, I couldn't go through with it.
Listen, you two, we need to speak with your father and figure something out. That night, the three of us approached Michael and told him what his ex-wife had attempted to force his daughters to do. He was at first enraged at them, but I managed to calm him down. After all, they had been fooled by their mother, but they had chosen to not go through with her evil plan. Shortly after that, we contacted Michael's lawyer, and he applied to have a restraining order placed on his ex-wife to keep her away from us. As a result, we had cameras installed around the outside of our home and in the garage. Weeks later, they proved incredibly valuable as we caught Michael's ex-wife enter our garage and cut the brakes on my car. Neither Michael nor I could believe what we had caught her doing. Not only was she guilty of breaking the restraining order we had against her, but now she was attempting to murder me as well. We turned the video over to the police and pressed charges against her. Not long afterwards, she was arrested, and during the trial, both Jasmine and Candace confessed to what their mother had tried to get them to do. In the end, she was charged with attempted murder, breaking the conditions of the restraining order, and the delinquency of minors. The last one made the judge that presided over the case upset the most, and as such sentenced her to 10 years in prison. It hardly felt fair that she would only serve 10 years in prison, but it allowed Michael's lawyer the ability to get us full custody of the girls. Once the trial was all settled, the four of us moved away and started fresh in a new town and at a new school for the girls. We knew that if we hadn't, that the girls would have been harassed at their school over what they had almost done, and we wanted to give them the best chance at success. In the end, it was the best thing for us, as we were able to have a fresh start. It took years, but we did eventually grow closer, and I'm happy to say that Jasmine, Candace, and I have grown incredibly close, and they have grown to call me their mother. Not only that, but after I gave birth to twin boys, the two of them took to the roles of loving and caring older sisters quite well, and I am very happy to say that we are a very happy family now. As for Michael's ex-wife, well, one day she will be released from prison, but will have no family anymore as both Jasmine and Candace have sworn that they refuse to ever speak with her ever again. She is looking at a very lonely and desolate future and has no one to blame but herself. The last I heard about Michael's ex-wife was because the police had contacted us because she'd tried to escape prison. Thankfully, she hadn't succeeded, but they thought we might want to know that it would add to her prison sentence, and that now she really would spend the rest of her life in prison. During her escape attempt, she'd almost had an accident that left her with a lot of missing teeth and couple broken bones. Once she healed in the hospital, she'd be back in prison for life, this time with significantly less teeth. Please subscribe to the channel.